3. The House on Pine Street. All the houses on Pine Street looked the same because they were company houses, built long ago by the owner of the button factory. Each was narrow with a white picket fence and three steps that led up to the front porch. Each was painted green with white trim and had a brick chimney. The only way to tell Grandpa Abe's house from the other houses was its cherry red porch swing. Grandpa Abe's cane tapped as he led Ben up the stairs. The inside of his house smelled like coffee and onions, which wasn't so bad. Dust sparkled at the edges of a crowded bookshelf and a cluttered table. The furniture was patched and faded. Stuffing leaked from the sofa pillows. The entire house was the size of Ben's father's garage. "Not much to look at, but it's home," Grandpa Abe said. "I know you're used to much better." Ben set the hamster cage on the kitchen counter, right next to a bowl of peanuts, and looked around. There was no big screen TV, no chandelier, no fancy Persian carpets, and clearly no housekeeper. Ben opened his hamster cage and dumped in 2 peanuts. They landed with soft plops in the newspaper litter. As Snooze popped his head out of his nest and grabbed a treat, Ben wondered if his grandfather was poor. Grandpa Abe rubbed the back of his bald head. "Better go get your suitcase and I'll show you where you'll be sleeping." Ben went back outside. A single star had appeared in the now cloudless sky. It never got very dark in Los Angeles because the city never went to sleep. But here in Buttonville, even with the lights glowing, night pressed in with eerie, charcoal-colored shadows. So dark, so quiet. Ben grabbed his suitcase and hurried back into the house. "This is your bedroom," Grandpa Abe said as he opened the door behind the kitchen. He reached up and pulled a cord that hung from the ceiling. The light switched on, revealing a room not much bigger than a closet, with peeling yellow wallpaper and the faint odor of mothballs. "If I were you, I'd keep that mouse in here, out of Barnaby's reach." "Snooze isn't a mouse, he's a hamster," Ben said as he dumped his suitcase onto the bed. Dust particles jumped off the quilt and took flight through the air like cosmic gymnasts. "Who's Barnaby?" "Who's Barnaby?" "Barnaby's my cat." "You have a cat?" Ben's heart thumped. He snatched the cage from the kitchen counter and hurried back into the bedroom. "A cat?" "He's an excellent mouser, that cat," Grandpa Abe said proudly. "Mouser? What, you're surprised by that?" "Cats catch mice, that's what they do," Grandpa Abe said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But Barnaby's never killed a hamster. As long as you keep the door closed, your hamster will be fine." Grandpa Abe pointed his cane around the room. "That's your closet and dresser drawers." Ben set the cage on top of the dresser. His parents hadn't said anything about a cat that liked to hunt. But then again, his parents hadn't said anything about this trip except, "We need time alone to work out some troubles, so we're sending you to stay with your grandfather." Grandpa Abe hobbled over and sat at the end of the bed. "So, what are your plans?" "Plans? For the summer, what do you want to do?" Ben shrugged. "What is there to do?" "There aren't any jobs if that's what you were hoping for. Ever since the button factory closed, finding work is nearly impossible around here." Dust particles swirled beneath the overhead bulb. "You could come with me to the senior center. We've got bingo on Monday, board games on Tuesday, dance lessons on Wednesday, guest lectures on Thursday, and Friday is birthday day, when we celebrate all the birthdays for that week. Saturday is pudding day." "Pudding day? We'll eat pudding. It's fun." Ben didn't want to hurt his grandfather's feelings, so he simply said, "Yeah, sounds like fun." Grandpa Abe reached over and patted Ben's knee. "Cheer up, boy chick. It won't be that bad. You'll find something to do. Boys always find something to do. You'll keep yourself busy while your parents work out their troubles, and then you'll be back home for school before you know it." With a grunt and some creaking of the knees, he got to his feet. In the meantime, I have a leftover brisket that I'll warm in the microwave." As soon as his grandfather had left the room, Ben released a groan that he'd been holding since he got off the plane. This was going to be the worst summer ever. Summer was supposed to be spent swimming in his pool with friends or rowing at the lake, not stuck at the senior center playing board games and eating pudding. "Nothing fancy around here," Grandpa Abe explained 15 minutes later as they sat at the kitchen table. He handed Ben a chipped plate and a fork with a bent handle. "Been living the bachelor life for 20 years. Don't care much for fancy. I need fancy like I need a hole in the head." Dinner was pretty good. The potatoes were creamy and the brisket wasn't too dry. The pickles were served right out of the jar and the soda was sipped straight from the can. "No need for glasses," Grandpa Abe explained. "Glasses need to be washed, and I don't like doing dishes." He nodded toward the stack of dirty dishes that towered in the sink. Grandpa Abe didn't seem to care about manners. He chewed loudly, scraping the last bits of food right off his plate and into his mouth. After a loud burp, he wiped his mouth on his sleeve. Ben looked around. Napkins didn't appear to be part of Grandpa Abe's world, so Ben wiped his mouth on his sleeve too. "Let's go sit on the porch and count the stars," Grandpa Abe said as he reached for his cane. "And maybe we'll catch a glimpse of that bird, the one as big as a helicopter." He winked at Ben. He clearly was still believing that the bird had come from Ben's imagination. As Ben carried his plate to the sink, he pictured the blonde girl. "Dragon," she'd mouthed. Ben frowned. He didn't think for an instant that the rope-tailed bird was actually a dragon. Dragons weren't real. Dragons were stories. And he knew all about stories. But the bird was something. And if not a dragon, then what?